You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey! Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Thursday, November 13th, 2014, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Thanks for being with us here for another great show we've got planned for you over the next 2 hours here on the 420 Radio Network. Today on the show, we visit with another speaker from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. It's our Cops Say Legalize Drugs segment. Always informative to find out how police and prosecutors have learned the war on drugs is an expensive failure and why legalization is a much better solution. Patrick Heintz will be joining us from Massachusetts. He is a former mental health and correctional officer there, and he'll talk to us. We'll also bring up the disturbing report we played yesterday from Radley Balco on the inhumanity of American prisons and how our mistreatment of mental health in this country has really led to a lot of these terrible stories that we had to tell. That's coming up at 1:30. And then at 45 after the hour, we're going to take time for a radical rant, dig a little more in depth in a subject we covered earlier this week as well. And that is New York City's new pot policies. It's been lambasted in the Daily News and the Post out there. And we're going to take a look at the good and the bad from that policy, how it might shape up, and why, once again, legalization is the real solution for what goes on in America's marijuana arrest capital, New York City. Also on the show today, we've got a new anti-drug PSA of the day. This one's from Stephen Harper's government in Canada, the most recent anti-marijuana ad playing up there. Stay tuned for that later in the show. Also on the show today, in drug war data mining, we're going to show you a report from 2010 that is still relevant on policing for profit, the abuse of civil asset forfeiture in America, and give you some idea where your state lies on the spectrum of good to bad when it comes to asset forfeiture laws. On the show today, before our 20 after break, we'll go behind the headlines and show you how medical marijuana makes media mangle math. Little alliteration for a Thursday. Going to take a look at 3 different stories. They've cropped up again recently, but you've seen them before, and they all demonstrate a pretty fundamental misunderstanding of statistics, probability, and mathematics. We will take that on in Behind the Headlines right after the 420 Radio News, which we always do at the top of the show, right after the next break. And in the news today, we've got representatives in our U.S. House from the states that have legalized marijuana calling on other representatives to join them and get on board the legalization train. We've got new sales figures for recreational and medical marijuana in Colorado for the month of September. We've got the governor of Arkansas who's leaving office due to term limits, set to pardon his own son for a marijuana felony. We got a farmer in Washington state who's selling a ton of marijuana. Literally a ton of marijuana. And public hearings are underway across Vermont on the issue of legalizing marijuana. Then stay tuned for Hour 2, Toker Talk Radio. We'll get you our daily Toker tunes with Chuck Diesel, something on the hip-hop front. We've also got some other stories that we're covering. Those pot shops on the so-called Green Mile in Denver, once again trying to put together a holiday marketing effort with the antique stores that don't like them so much. And speaking of holiday marketing, you know about Black Friday, when you get all those great sales at the Walmart on the TVs and such. Well, there's Black Friday deals at pot shops in Colorado this year. We'll tell you all about those. There's a great convention going on in Las Vegas that we'll bring you some information on, and a piece from Ladybud showing how Tommy Chong on Dancing with the Stars is boosting senior support for medical marijuana. All that coming up on The Russ Belville Show.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, fighting prohibition since 2012.
Hey, what's up? This is Killer Mike, one half of Run the Jewels, and I'm telling you, November 23rd through 27th, you need to be at Cannabis Cup. I did it last year, and I got so high, I can tell you what color Jesus' furniture is. I got so high, I kissed the sky twice. I got so much enlightenment, I know Buddha's last name. Do you feel what I'm telling you right now? The people are great. You don't have to search or call your sketch-ass dealer who won't call you back. You don't have to go lurking through the hood to find good smoke. You need to get out of the country. You've been sitting on your block too long smoking weed. Get out and have an adventure. See you at Cannabis Cup, November 23rd through 27th. Yeah.
Marijuana Compassion and Common Sense with Lanny Swerdlow, RN, from the Inland Empire, California. Replaying Tuesdays at 10 Pacific on 420radio.org.
Hey, this is Willie Nelson for Normal. And I smoke pot and I like it a lot. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer than alcohol. There's nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting those who smoke marijuana responsibly. To learn what you can do to help, contact NORML at NORML.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORMAL.
It's time for the 420 Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Transcripts of 420 Radio News are available daily on our website at 420radio.org. Now, here's Russ Belville with your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is your 420 Radio News for Thursday, November 13th, 2014. Amid close midterm elections around the country, quote, there was one clear winner, ending our failed prohibition of marijuana and instead legalizing, regulating, and taxing adult use, end quote. Democratic Representative Earl Blumenauer of Oregon said at a news conference with 3 House colleagues. Republican Representative Dana Rohrabacher of California said he expects voters in his state would approve an initiative. Quote, my message to my fellow Republicans is wake up and see where the American people are, but also see what the fundamental principles are in this debate, end quote. Rohrabacher said, citing individual liberty, limited government, and doctors' freedom to make the best decisions for their patients. Blumenauer, Rohrabacher, and 2 other colleagues, Democratic Representative Jared Polis of Colorado and Democratic Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton, who represents Washington, D.C. but cannot vote on the House floor, said they have bipartisan support for 2 small measures that would allow legal pot companies to open bank accounts and deduct business expenses from their taxes. They also hope to allow the Department of Veterans Affairs to prescribe medical marijuana. Sales of marijuana for recreational and medical use fell in September for the first time since Colorado legalized it in January, according to tax data released this week. Colorado brought in $7.2 million in taxes and fees from recreational and medical marijuana sales in September. That's down from $7.7 million in August. Michael Elliott, executive director of the Marijuana Industry Group, attributed the drop in September to the lull in tourism that typically occurs between the summer and winter months in Colorado. Tourists are some of the biggest consumers of Colorado's cannabis. A study by Colorado's Revenue Department found that out-of-state visitors account for 44% of total marijuana sales in big cities and as much as 90% in mountain resorts. Tony Fox, owner of Denver dispensary 3D Cannabis Center, said, quote, once the ski resorts open, sales will pick back up again, end quote. Outgoing Arkansas Governor Mike Beebe said Wednesday he plans to pardon his son's felony marijuana conviction, arguing he deserves the same second chance as hundreds of other nonviolent offenders. Beebe is leaving office in January due to term limits, and he is being succeeded by Republican Governor-elect Asa Hutchinson. The governor's spokesman, Matt DeCample, said Beebe has issued more than 700 pardons since taking office in 2007. Quote, a significant number of those have been young first-time drug offenders because he believes that if you make a mistake, especially with nonviolent crime, and you straighten your life out, you deserve a second chance, end quote, DeCample said. He continued, quote, there's no reason why he wouldn't hold his son to that same standard, end quote. The state parole board had recommended a pardon for Kyle Beebe in October. He was sentenced to 3 years supervised probation, $1,150 in fines and court costs, and had his driver's license suspended for 6 months. Beebe was the state's attorney general when his son was convicted. A Washington state farmer is selling off a ton of marijuana, literally 2,000 pounds worth, to the highest bidder in one of the first large-scale legal pot auctions in modern American history. On Saturday, Randy Williams of Fireweed Farm in Prosser, Washington, will offer for sale the marijuana he's been growing all summer. At retail prices, Williams' crop could be worth $6 million. Many of the plants are a dozen feet tall, grown in the wine region just north of the Columbia River Valley in south-central Washington. Washington's law separates growers, processors, and retailers, while store owners in Colorado often grow most of their own marijuana, which means there's no need to auction it off there. Washington retailers have been eagerly awaiting the outdoor harvest, which has the potential to drive down prices significantly by increasing supply. Public hearings are underway across Vermont on the issue of legalizing marijuana. Earlier this year, the legislature ordered a study on the topic after the state decriminalized pot for adults found with an ounce or less in 2013. Bennington Chief of Police Paul Doucette is strongly against it, as he's already having so many drug issues in the state. Quote, "We can't control alcohol," he said. "We can't control tobacco products. We don't want people under the age of 21 consuming alcohol. It's happening. We don't want people under 18 using tobacco. It's happening." End quote. Scott Staler, owner of Green Mountain Hydroponic, is for legalization, claiming that, quote, "Vermont is pretty progressive and open-minded," end quote. This has been your 420 Radio News for Thursday, November 13th, 2014. I'm Russ Belville. 420 Radio, your ticket to the Boston Freedom Rally.
Vier met ons de 27e jaarlijkse Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam van 23 tot 27 november en kom de beste wiet ter wereld vieren. Cannabis Cup juryleden kunnen seminars bijwonen, de nieuwste wietproducten zien op de 5-daagse expo en stemmen op hun favoriete strains van hun favoriete coffeeshops in Amsterdam. Juryleden kunnen ook concerten bijwonen, zoals die van Action Bronson, Revolution en meer. En wees erbij op donderdag 27 november voor de uitreiking van de High Times Cannabis Cups voor de beste wiet ter wereld. Ontdek echte marihuana-vrijheid. Kom naar de High Times Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam. Voor kaartjes en informatie ga naar cannabiscup.com.
If you're an adult who enjoys a good beer, there's a similar product you might want to know about. One without all the calories and serious health problems. Less toxic so it doesn't cause hangovers or overdose deaths, and it's not linked to violence or reckless behavior. Marijuana. Less harmful than alcohol, and time to treat it that way. For more information, visit marijuanaissafer.org.
Welcome back, everyone. 13 after the hour, and today in Behind the Headlines, I want to take a look at 3 different headlines that are new, but they're old. They're new stories, but the same basic, tired, worn cliches are being used in these headlines and these stories that I think just should get a quick debunking from time to time, so I brought them up today. And they all pretty much concern the mainstream media's inability to handle statistics, probability, and mathematics. Now, long ago, I had swiped this line. I had read it in someone's email signature at one point, and I swiped it. And I wish I had attribution. I wish I could credit the person who came up with this, because it's brilliant. Marijuana is unique in its ability to addle the brains of those who do not use it. That's just so brilliant. We got to have a name for that, but it's a great quote, because it really does explain how otherwise sentient, intelligent beings working in the media could be bamboozled into some of the things they think about marijuana. With even just the slightest common sense or research, they could debunk this themselves. Let's start with this one. This one came out today. The headline here was, 24 doctors recommended 34,000 Arizona medical marijuana cards. And this was out of the Arizona Daily Star. And it's a variation on a headline that we've gotten in Oregon and Colorado and Montana and any other medical marijuana state with a significant patient population. See, the public is supposed to be shocked. Shocked, do you hear? that so many of these pot docs are churning out medical marijuana recommendations like everybody's a winner ribbon at a grade school swim meet. Well, folks, here's why it's a bogus thought, a bogus concept. Many doctors who'd like to write a recommendation for medical marijuana can't, because they work for a clinic that bans it, or they work for a hospital where it's against the policy, or their insurance would cancel on them if they did it, and so forth. And then there's other doctors who just won't write medical marijuana recommendations because they fear the stigma and backlash from other patients and doctors. So every medical marijuana state ends up with a few doctors who specialize. I mean, it's no more surprising that a few doctors in the West write the majority of medical marijuana recommendations than a few doctors in the South perform the majority of abortions. There's just a few of them that can and will do it. Another headline, this is more the story that's problematic. The headline is, "Oversight of Colorado medical marijuana doctors remains spotty." This was last August in the Denver Post. And this is the story about it's bad enough we've got too few doctors that are, just churning out medical marijuana recommendations. But then we take a look at the statistics and we find out that 94% of the Coloradoans who are getting a medical marijuana card are getting it for chronic pain. And they put together a little graphic, 94% chronic pain. And the public's supposed to be shocked that so many people are getting cards for what must be fake pain. Well, here's why that's bogus. When you look at the graphic, it also shows that 16% of Coloradoans got their medical marijuana cards for muscle spasms, 11% for severe nausea, and 8% for cancer, seizures, AIDS, glaucoma, and cachexia. Let's see, 94 plus 16 plus 11 plus 8. You probably noticed that adds up to 129%. Because patients can get medical marijuana for more than one condition. Do you suppose multiple sclerosis causes a little pain? Do you suppose cancer is a little bit of pain? And regardless, even if it was just for pain, why are we mocking pain? A recent survey of over 90,000 people showed that 1 in 5 Americans are battling constant pain that occurs daily and lasts longer than 3 months. That's not including the people battling the occasional flare-up of arthritis in the knee or some back pain or something. Constant chronic pain, 1 out of 5 of us. If anything, we've got too few people using medical marijuana for pain. Oh, and this last one. This one came out the day after the election. It's Florida medical marijuana opponents prove money talks. This one comes from Sue Rush from National Families in Action. It's an opinion piece, and it's about how the anti-marijuana side finally had some money to work with, and thanks to funding their TV ads, they were able to defeat the medical marijuana amendment in Florida. This is a quote from Rush. She says, "Supporters raised more than $2.5 million for California's Prop 215, the nation's first medical marijuana initiative passed in 1996. Opponents raised less than $35,000, a ratio of 71-1. That pattern continued until this year in Florida." End quote. Well, here's why it's bogus. Sue Rush is just playing Kevin Sabet's latest David versus Goliath talking point. This idea that the legalizers have Soros and Lewis's millions to push legalization, and the poor, underfunded cops, rehabbers, and parents have mere pennies. Of course, this talking point ignores David's Death Star, the federal government, which has pumped hundreds of millions of dollars into anti-drug ads, which has funneled millions to these local anti-drug groups for anti-marijuana education, and has spent 40 years enforcing marijuana prohibition at the barrel of a gun. And furthermore, Florida requires 60% to pass a constitutional amendment. So, whoopee! The anti-pot forces got $5 million of billionaire Sheldon Adelson's money to air scary ads about medical marijuana that dropped what had been 88% poll support for medical marijuana all the way down to 58%. They spent all that money to find out that a huge majority of Floridians support wide open for any condition medical marijuana in a midterm election where few people young vote in the South.
people? On dope?
By the way, did you know that Sheldon Adelson, the man whose money helped defeat the amendment for medical marijuana in Florida, is a huge funder of medical marijuana research in Israel? Yeah, got to protect his investment in those future cannaceuticals, doesn't he? It's 20 after. Happy 420. We'll be back with some drug war data mining, taking a look at asset forfeiture right after this. 420 Radio, freeing your mind 24 hours a day. Hey tokers and tokettes, Radical Russ here for the Canador, a practical solution to keep herbs from drying. The Canador is the perfect airtight storage system for your fine herbs, from the half-inch thick walnut and cherry wood construction, clear top perforated jars for storage, and the humidity bead system that keeps your herbs at a perfect 65% relative humidity. I keep all my herbs in the Canador, and you should too. Check out Canador.com for more information. Weed Porn Daily with Oscar Diaz from Florida, replaying Mondays at 12 Pacific on 420radio.org. Get.Buzz. .Buzz is the internet platform that fuels community interest, excitement, and new experiences. .Buzz is the premier online destination for internet users seeking the latest news on a variety of topics. .Buzz appeals to groups active in blogging, communications, journalism, advertising, and marketing. .Buzz offers registrants a stronger alternative to the shrinking namespace of existing top-level domain names, such as .com, .net, and .org. Get your name now at get.buzz. Arguing for the end of adult marijuana prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It is even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more in this edition of Drug War Data Mining. All right, welcome back. 22 after the hour, and today in the Drug War Data Mining, we're taking a look at a report that was produced in 2010 for the Institute of Justice. You can find them at ij.org, and it's entitled Policing for Profit, the Abuse of Civil Asset Forfeiture. Now, it came out in 2010. Some of the laws may have changed since then, but by and large, this is still a fantastic reference for how civil asset forfeiture happens in this country. And they break it down state by state, ranking each state in a letter grade system from A to F. Only one state even got an A-, only 2 others got a B. It's pretty sad out there when you take a look at it. And you can find this, like I said, at ij.org, Policing for Profit. Of course, we're talking about civil forfeiture, where police and prosecutors can seize your car and other property, sell it, and use the proceeds to fund agency budgets, all without so much as charging you with a crime. Unlike criminal forfeiture, where property is taken after its owner has been found guilty in a court of law, with civil forfeiture, owners need not be charged or convicted of a crime to lose homes, cars, cash, and property. Americans are supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, but civil forfeiture turns that principle on its head. With civil forfeiture, your property is guilty until you prove it innocent. And oftentimes they take just enough to make it worthwhile for them, but not so much as to make it worthwhile for you to spend the money on a lawyer to try to get that money back. And a civil asset forfeiture attorney is one expensive type of attorney. It's really legalized theft by the police agencies out there. And it varies from state to state how bad this can be. We'll switch over to our video window here, and we'll give you a look at the different states and their letter grades, according to the Institute for Justice. Most of the United States is in this orange, this dark red-orange level, and it ranges from green are the A-, white are the B's, yellow are the C's, and orange are the D's. And so some of the country, Oregon, Idaho, getting a grade of C. That's great, I suppose. Everywhere in the South, from California all the way across to Florida, every southern state but Louisiana comes up in that D range. Maine being the only state to get the A-, Vermont and North Dakota getting the Bs. And the reason why can be seen by how some of the factors they use to judge. And this is the proceeds. This is the civil forfeiture proceeds that are distributed to law enforcement. Like how much of the items that get seized, how much of the cash, how much of the homes go to law enforcement. Now, this ranges from 0% for states like Indiana, Maine, Maryland, Missouri, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Vermont, half in Colorado and Wisconsin, moving up through the states until we get to this list of states at the bottom. The states where 100% of what they seize goes to the cops. Alaska, Alabama, all of these states, Idaho among them, where the cops get to keep everything they seize. Another thing to look at is what it takes, the standard of proof. And as we move down this scale, we see how it's more difficult for a conviction, more difficult to be able to take those assets. In Alabama, Alaska, Delaware, Illinois, Massachusetts, Missouri, Montana, Rhode Island, South Carolina, and Wyoming, they only need prima facie evidence, just probable cause. And prima facie just means just the barest of evidentiary standards to be able to take your stuff. And it moves through the evidentiary chain until we get to probable cause, preponderance of the evidence, clear and convincing evidence, clear and convincing beyond a reasonable doubt, and all the way up to beyond a reasonable doubt. And 3 states require beyond a reasonable doubt to seize your property. That would be Nebraska, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. Next best, California, requiring clear and convincing evidence and beyond a reasonable doubt. But again, civil asset forfeiture is wrong. And Institute of Justice, IJ.org's report, Policing for Profit, can tell you more about it. It's still available online at the Institute of Justice, IJ.org. We'll post that link in our chat room for anyone who wants to take a look at it and learn more.
420 Radio, your ticket to...
Приветствую. Меня зовут Дэнни Денко. Мы от журнала High Times приглашаем вас в Амстердам с 23 до 27 ноября, чтобы вместить ежегодный турнир Cannabis Cup, уже 27-й по счету. Там мы сравним множество будов марихуаны и гашиша из местных кофешопов. Еще у нас там выставка товаров, семинары по выращиванию, ночные концерты и вручение премии за лучшие в мире сорты марихуаны. Билеты можно купить на сайте cannabiscup.com. Ждем вас!
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, treat law enforcement with respect and stand up for your rights by repeating, "I respectfully invoke all of my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak with my attorney." Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at omarfigueroa.com.
NORMAL stands for Responsible Adult Cannabis Use. If cannabis use is causing problems in your life, consider taking a break or seeking medical assistance. Consider ceasing cannabis use if you have a family history of mental illness. Don't drive or operate heavy machinery while impaired by cannabis use. Cannabis use is not without risks, even though the risks are far less than those posed by legal drugs.
Are you a hypocrite? If you live a closeted cannabis lifestyle, you are. Read about 7 people living a closeted cannabis lifestyle who are on the verge of coming out in The Hypocrites by Mara K. Eaton. Available at areyouahypocrite.net. You can purchase the book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, also available on iTunes. Check out Mara K. Eaton on Facebook as well. Learn more at areyouahypocrite.net.
One of the most disturbing elements of the Prohibition War is how it's made police the enemy of otherwise law-abiding cannabis consumers. Fortunately, one group of police officers knows the futility of prohibition and reaches out to educate the community and current law enforcement. Today, the Russ Belville Show visits with another speaker from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition with one clear message. Cops say legalize drugs.
Welcome back, everyone. Half past, and we're joined on telephone by Patrick Heintz from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. Patrick, how are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks.
Thank you for being on our show again. We've spoken a couple of times, and it's always good to have you on, and very good timing to have you on today, because yesterday I went over a piece written by Radley Balco on the Washington Post called The Inhumanity of American Prisons, and it pointed out these terrible crimes that have been committed, in my opinion, against people who have been imprisoned, often mentally ill people who are locked in solitary and denied water and boiled, thrown into scalding hot showers. I mean, it's just some awful stuff. And I just wanted to ask about your experience in working in the prison system and having to deal with mentally ill inmates and how things may have changed since then or gotten worse.
Well, from my personal frame of reference, first of all, it should be pointed out that there's basically three types of prisons. There's county jails, and county jails are where people are sent when they have a sentence that's 3 years or less. State prison is where they're sent if they get a sentence that's greater than 3 years. And then there's federal crimes, and people are sent to federal prisons. Now, from my own personal experience in corrections, I worked in Hampden County, and we have one of the larger county jails in Massachusetts. But I was also fortunate that Hampden County was the first county jail in America to have a sheriff with a human service degree. And he's going to retire now, but he was our sheriff for 40 years, and he had a master's degree in social work. So the wonderful thing about that was when he first took office 40 years ago and here in Hampden County, his insight was that everyone in his prison, in very short order, was going to return to the community and once again be his neighbor. And so his insight was that it is in my personal best interest and my neighbor's best interest if these inmates whose care and custody I have been given responsibility for return to the community in better shape than when they entered my corrections facility. So he started some very progressive and integrative and groundbreaking treatment protocols for county jail, and it was he referred to it as answering the bell. Everybody in his correction facility had to answer the bell, and if you wanted to earn privileges, then you had to participate. So everybody has to start working on their GED if they don't have a high school education, and all these other programs, substance abuse treatment classes, and so forth. And so it was just a wonderful, progressive, humane facility to work in. And as a result, the Hampden County Sheriff's Department has the lowest recidivism rate of any county jail in the country. It was the first jail that started the electronic monitoring, community corrections facilities, and so forth, and recognized the necessity for transitional services. You don't just boot them out the door and say, don't do it again, we'll see you later. People need to prepare to transition, have resources to transition, and then transition so that they can be successful. But as far as the problem about the mentally ill in prisons, it is a horrible, horrific problem. And, years ago in Massachusetts when they closed all the state hospitals, or mental institutions, people would talk about it and say, well, the people have been de-institutionalized, when in reality, all they had been was trans-institutionalized, and they went from the state hospitals to the prisons. So probably a full 30% of the prison population, this is just off the top of my head, has mental health issues. So in the facility I worked in, there was a very detailed and elaborate intake process for processing new inmates. And a big part of that was the intake and assessment evaluated mental health issues, history, and need. And we had, advanced degree personnel, mental health personnel on the staff. We had a very well supported and staffed human service department within the corrections facility that would assess people and stabilize them. And so because first what we did was recognize mental illness in an inmate, then we could stabilize them, and if medications were necessary, start those protocols and so forth, and then we could go from there. Unfortunately, most correction facilities don't do that. You have, all this inane talk about getting tough on crime, and zero tolerance, and 3 strikes and you're out, and lock them up and throw away the key. And, all this get tough on crime rhetoric is really about stuffing our prisons and getting tough on budgets. It's getting tough on education. It's getting tough on infrastructure. It's getting tough on all the other community resources that require funding, because we're spending it all with mass incarcerations. And the fact that America is the number one incarcerator of its citizens on the planet. 1 out of every 4 people on the planet that's incarcerated is in an American jail, which is horrifying. That's, in fact, the data point that got my attention from LEAP and caused me to get involved with the organization. I just could not believe that in the land of the free, that we're 5% of the world's population and we house 25% of the world's incarcerated population. I said, something has to be wrong with that. I mean, Western European industrial nations incarcerate their citizens at a rate approximately of 150 citizens per 100,000. In America, I believe, if it's not exactly, it's very close to not 150 per 100,000, but 1,009 per 100,000. So it's like, are we 4 times worse than the rest of the Western industrialized world, or is there something wrong with our system? So when you start overcrowding like that, care and custody becomes more and more difficult. The staffing ratios from when I first got into corrections to when I left it were, they just kept getting worse and worse and worse, where you might have 1 CO to 35 inmates. Now you have 1 CO to 105 inmates. Sometimes he has a partner in these modular jails. And, then when you have the older jails, you're just warehousing people. So, they call it corrections, and it is corrections if people are provided treatment. But if people aren't provided access to treatment, it's just warehousing.
Right.
And, of course, people don't come out of a situation like that better than when they went in.
And again, we're speaking with...
I don't know if that answers your question, but...
no, it's very, very good information. We're speaking with Patrick Heintz, who's a retired mental health and corrections officer in Massachusetts. And I also want to look at the other side of it, not the prisoners, but the officers. Part of Radley Balco's report talked about a prison in Pennsylvania where guards were staging combat and competitions between mentally ill inmates and calling it the, quote, retard Olympics, end quote. Sounds like there needs to be some training on the guard side as well on how to properly deal with these inmates, especially with solitary confinement being handed out fairly liberally for even the most minor offenses. Can you speak to that?
Well, that was another thing. Of course, from my frame of reference, I think I, again, feel very fortunate that I landed in the Hampden County House of Correction because our sheriff spent a lot of time communicating to his staff that we're not guards, we're highly trained corrections professionals. And, there was you had to go through a 6-week training academy before you got on the job, and then you had 2 weeks after the academy where you you weren't really on shift, but you worked a shift so that you could see how it was done and so forth. He also insisted that all of the staff, except clerical, which was all the human service workers and all the food service workers and all the corrections officers, all attended and successfully graduated from the academy. And what that did, his thought on that was that would form a bond between the correction staff and the treatment staff. And so you wouldn't have this schism where the COs are saying, well, we got to keep these people under control, and then these treatment people are telling them they're all, oh, poor baby, the world's mean to you and so forth. So the treatment staff and the correction staff were all on the same page, and it's about, as the sheriff said, it's not our job as corrections personnel to punish this population. The judge and the courts punished them when they took away their freedom. So they've already been punished, and now they've been passed over into our care and custody, and our job is care and custody, and to provide, a service to our community, which is to hopefully provide them with structure and supervision. And the supervision is mandatory. I mean, you have to follow the rules or you will be consequenced for it. It's not, this namby-pamby stuff, because it is a tough population. He also said, corrections officers have the toughest job in the world. They don't make movies about corrections officers. We are dealing with the most difficult population on the planet to work with, the antisocial, the criminal, the violent, the mentally ill. So it's a very, very difficult job to lock yourself behind the wall with this population day after day for 25 years and keep your head on straight. So if you find yourself in a facility where they don't have this understanding of what the mission is, and they're just hiring Bubba and my cousin, and putting them in a uniform and saying, go do what the other guards tell you to do, you're going to have some problems. And these things about I forgot what you call it, the
competitions,
combat with developmentally challenged and so forth. Of course, I am sure that is, if it's true, is at the very ragged fringes of corrections facilities in the United States. And if it happens, it needs to be stopped. And the way to do that is through proper training and supervision and a clear understanding of what the mission of corrections should be.
Yeah, completely agreed.
So, horror stories do happen because, in any given profession, the data is that all of the crime in America is committed by approximately 3% of the population. So, if 3% of the population is, and what that kind of breaks down to is for every person in jail, you have about 6 people outside doing crimes, and then that rotates. But if all the crime is committed by 3% of the population, you figure 3% of the police force is going to be antisocial, 3% of teachers are going to be antisocial, 3% of electricians are any population are not going to be correct.
Yeah.
And they can cause a lot of damage. those few bad apples. But by and large, just like with police, you know, you hear about the abuses of power and so forth, much more than you hear about issues like the police officer in New York who went in and bought a homeless guy some boots. And I think most people who get into law enforcement are motivated, sincerely motivated by a desire to serve and protect. But then there are the bad apples. But it's just like in human service and in mental health counseling. You know, most people go into it and, you know, they may get into it. They might start taking psych courses to find out if they're crazy, but then they want to help people is their motivation, or that they have had a counseling experience that improved the quality of their life, and they want to participate in that process. And then there's the fringe element, the minority that have you know, unhealthy issues about power and control, and these are the clinicians that will you know, sleep with their clients and you know, over-identify and bring in drugs or to prisons or whatever. But it is the minority, so you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. You want to correct those problems, but I think there's a lot of good people who want the system to work much better, and people who do this. The police that brutalize, you know, someone under arrest, you know, that just puts the rest of the police force in a horrible position, and you know, makes them look bad, and they're not approving of that kind of behavior.
Yeah. Well,
by and large, the vast majority, I think, are right along with you and I, and we got to get rid of these people who don't belong there. You do that with more supervision and training.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see that we can make that happen. I want to thank you for your expertise and just giving us another perspective on these stories. They can seem pretty horrible, but we got to keep things in perspective. Patrick Heintz is a speaker with Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. You can find out more about them at leap.cc. Thanks, Patrick.
Okay, thanks again. Bye-bye.
All right, when we come back, we'll have time for a radical rant on New York City's latest pot policy. Stick around right after the new anti-drug war of the day from Canada's Stephen Harper's administration. Stay tuned.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
420 Radio, your ticket to the High Times Cannabis Cups. You know Herb Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs, we've got Frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs, we've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com. And follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher on Twitter. In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
Smoking a joint. It can seem harmless. But did you know that marijuana is on average 300 to 400% stronger than it was 30 years ago? And that smoking marijuana can seriously harm a teen's developing brain. Smoking marijuana, it can damage a teen for life. Get the facts and talk with your kids about the dangers of smoking marijuana. Visit canada.ca/drug prevention. A message from the Government of Canada.
This has been the anti-drug public service announcement of the day. To cure this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Russ Belville Show every weekday on 420radio.org. When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com.
You can't handle the truth.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
You have offended my family.
Hey, this is great, man.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
I know nothing.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
We don't need no stinking budget.
Homosexuality, immorality in general.
How in the century you have slurred the meaning of the words we, the people.
Be warned, this is not your mother's marijuana.
You could ask yourself a question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. I want to have them answered immediately.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
All right, welcome back, everyone. 51 and a half after the hour. And following up on yesterday's story, we told you about New York City making the possession of less than 25 grams of marijuana a summons offense rather than an arrestable offense. Just coming into line with the state that had decriminalized marijuana way back in the 70s. It's always been that trick where they make you put it out in public view so that they could get you an arrest rather than the decriminalized amount in your pocket. But now, due to a lot of pressure from Drug Policy Alliance, Marijuana Arrest Research Project, ACLU, all sorts of groups, the new mayor, Bill de Blasio, has been under a lot of pressure to end this racially charged, racially disproportionate arrest crusade in New York City, which has long been the marijuana arrest capital of America. More arrests in New York City than any other city. So looking through this, the reaction to this new announcement. Now, the commissioner is Bill Bratton. Important to understand that Bill Bratton was the original police commissioner back in the Giuliani days and was a part of starting this whole problem, right? Of this over-arresting of marijuana consumers. Now he's part of the crusade now to end this practice, or at least change it. And the cops, the NYPD, are now talking about perhaps going on a slowdown. See, cops don't go on strike, but oftentimes they go on what's called a slowdown, where they just don't do a whole lot of work while they're on the job. I mean, they'll stop robberies, they'll stop, crimes in progress, but they're not going to get a whole lot of work done otherwise. According to this piece in the New York Daily News, that the cops think Mayor de Blasio cares more about his progressive agenda than enforcing the law. This is according to the union chief, the Sergeants Benevolent Association president, Ed Mullins, says, quote, "Some guys are really blaming de Blasio. The guy just doesn't get it with this whole far left agenda, and he's putting cops in a bad spot," end quote. So Mullins predicts that marijuana dealers will just stash their pot in smaller bags. That they'll just put it in a 24-gram bag now. He says, "I think there'll be a slowdown, according to a high-ranking New York Police Department source. Unions are not happy with the perception that City Hall is not behind the police." Now, we also pointed out in yesterday's story an unintended consequence of this. The whole point of wanting to stop the marijuana arrests is the disproportionately racist nature of it. In some places in New York City, marijuana might as well be legal. If you're a white person, in downtown, you're not going to have a problem. But if you're a black or Latino person uptown, there's going to be a major problem if you're caught smoking marijuana. So this, blatant discrimination and racism involved in the enforcement of marijuana laws in New York City has been a driving factor in getting this change. But the irony is, when you make an arrest for marijuana, there is a box you got to check off for the race or perceived race of the person that you are arresting. white, black, Latino, Asian, whatever. Summons in New York City don't have such data collection. So ironically, what we may end up doing here is, yes, we'll take away the arrest, but we'll still be racially disproportionately punishing the people who use marijuana who are black or Latino in the wrong part of town. Now, another thing to consider about this, when the police commissioner says this is Governor de Blasio's crazy left-wing progressive agenda. Oh, so left-wing. Quinnipiac did a poll of the state of New York and found that 57% of New Yorkers support legalizing recreational pot. That crazy left-wing New Yorkers. We're not just talking Manhattan. We're not just talking the boroughs. We're including the upstate conservatives in this. 58% support, 57% support for marijuana legalization. It's nearly 2 out of 3 men in support of legalization. And 46% of New Yorkers say they have smoked it in the past. And again, this is an arrest crusade that has been 85% blacks and Latinos being arrested for it. And we're talking about legalization of marijuana that could raise $750 million a year in New York State. Total economic benefits over $1 billion. And that's from the New York City Deputy Controller. But, of course, this has to happen through the state government. New York City could, I suppose, pass some sort of legalization municipal ordinance. But I doubt that cops would be cool with that, would probably go on using state law to justify their arrests, as they do in other places in this country. But it's impossible to even get medical marijuana through the assembly up there in Albany. Albany. But we're talking about enough money here from marijuana legalization that could pay for universal pre-kindergarten ×2 in the state of New York. The city has gone from 2,200 murders a year back in 1990 to just 269 murders this year. The city has gotten safer, and yet pot possession has become the leading cause of arrest in New York City. Back in 2011, at its peak, 150 arrests per day for marijuana possession in New York City. It's time for New York to just join the other states that have seen the wisdom in legalizing marijuana. To think that you'd ever end marijuana smoking in a place like New York City is ridiculous. All right. Almost had to sneeze there. That's one of the worst things that can happen to you on the radio. Stay tuned for Hour 2. We got all sorts of great content for you in Hour 2 coming up, including a look at Tommy Chong on Dancing with the Stars and how his success there is bringing seniors around on the topic of marijuana legalization. Also, news from Colorado on the marketing of marijuana for the holiday season. Will Black Monday turn into Green Monday? Looks like it. We got a story coming up in Hour 2. There's a big convention going on in Vegas. We'll give you some coverage from that. Plus, one other... Oh, yes, we've got the Groovin' Thursday with Chuck Diesel and a 1956 housewife on acid. Really? I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you